Creepy and Geeky. Welcome to Creepy and Geeky. I'm your host, Robert, and on today's episode, we're completing phase 1 of the MCU with the Avengers. Joining me for this episode is Donna from the Donna Tha Dead podcast. Welcome to the show, Donna.
Thank you for having me back. I cannot
Of
tell you how
course.
excited I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. You know what? I'm so used to talking to you, Robert, and my stupid laptop always would kind of blank out. So
Right.
now that my kids got me an actual laptop, guys, I actually have a laptop now, and I can plug it into the Ethernet, and I don't have to worry about it. But I still have the paranoid PTSD of, did I drop out? Did he hear me? Did I drop out? But thank you for letting me come back and do another MCU episode. I cannot wait to do some more of these with you. I'm beyond excited to do the geeky stuff with you. I'm telling you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm excited for that too. So, you got to be on the first episode with Iron Man. You're on this
Yep.
one. I know you're going to be on some more later on in the year. So, it's definitely, uh, if you don't like Donna, then I don't know what to tell you because I like Donna and she's on the show a lot.
I'm telling y'all, I got like a little pass, a season pass to come here whenever I
Right?
want. Just hang
Pretty
out, put my
much.
feet up.
I told you, like, I just, if you had the time available, I would just make you a co-host. So,
I know, but I already told you I like the pop-ins. I don't want that too much commitment. Like I will come when you ask me, but I don't want to be committed. I don't want to be in a committed podcast relationship right now.
uh, well, we had
Oh,
we have been talking. We had been talking about doing a podcast together, like a different podcast together, which we may still do sometime down the line.
yeah, we really do
Because I
need to
think
get
that
on
would,
that.
yeah, I think that would be a really fun show. So, anyway, for this show, we're talking about the Avengers, the very first Avengers movie, the culmination of everything that was going on in phase 1, the test of could the MCU really be interconnected and can't
And
could it
could they
pay
pull it
off?
off? Yeah,
Yeah. And they did.
they really
N-
did.
Now, looking back on it, like having gone back and rewatched this because I've rewatched it several times, of course,
Hmm.
because I love the MCU and stuff like that. But having gone back and rewatching this one was written and directed, unfortunately, by Joss
Yeah.
Whedon, who has become something of a negative figure now through his own actions.
Ugh.
But yeah. So we gotta kind of put that on the table of what this is. But and I want to talk about that a little bit too, because what we associate with him is, there's several things, which is, you know, a typically in most of his shows he had female leads and he gave them great agency and gave them
Hmm.
lots of power and everything like
Yep.
that, which was good. Don't get me wrong, that was very good. He had his own reasons for doing that, some of which may have been rooted in some kind of feminism, but also in his just being kind of a manipulative jerk.
Yeah.
And so we kind of get that in there. You get a little bit more with Natasha, with Black Widow in this
Hmm.
movie. And the other thing he's known for is being very quippy and pop culture savvy and everything. And you get a lot of that in here. And some of it plays well still, but some of it actually, for me, and
Hmm.
I might be the only one, it doesn't come off as good anymore. Some of it comes off as just that quips and things that are just so throwaway that they kind of take you out of it a little.
I could
Um,
see that. I really could see
so
that. I
yeah,
rewatched this recently and I felt that too. I was kind of like, man, when I saw this in the theater, I thought that was really, really fun. And now I'm like,
yeah,
it's just to get a
yeah,
free laugh?
yeah. And thinking about it, like, one example is the whole Galaga moment where, Tony Stark's, you know, going around and he's like, and that guy's playing Galaga. And then
Right.
and then it was fine as a kind of throwaway joke, but then when they go back to it and the guy actually like sneaks over and goes back to playing Galaga, it's like, okay, that's not good. Like that's it's a weird payoff to a joke that really didn't need to be in there.
Yeah,
And
we
I
didn't
get
really
it,
need
it's
to
a
see
fun
him
joke.
playing, you know? Just
Yeah.
the fact that he said it was enough to make us go, "Oh my God, you know, there's going to be that one guy sitting in the chair that's goofing off while everybody else is doing all of the work." That was fine.
Yeah. Yeah. But overall, I think the movie is successful. I think that we get reintroduced to the Hulk, and in this one it's now Mark Ruffalo. We get introduced to
Hmm.
Mark Ruffalo as Banner. um and so that was good. That was a major change for the MCU, and one that was very well received, and I enjoy that. Mark Ruffalo is definitely in terms of being part of the MCU, I think he's a better choice than Edward Norton.
Oh yeah, I definitely think he's a better choice. There's something about him that makes, I don't know, Banner, it makes it feel more, at least to me, more like the comic book and and
Right.
I'm older, but more like the TV series where you really feel like this is a person who just doesn't want that other side of him to come out. And
Right.
Edward Norton, I didn't really get that from him.
Yeah, I don't know, I never really believed that Edward Norton was like super intelligent either. Like, not that himself, like he himself isn't intelligent,
Hmm.
because he is. But just, I don't know, the way he played Banner didn't come off as being very um super genius, because
Yeah,
Banner is a super genius. He's
exactly.
on the same level of genius as, or near the same level as Tony is, in his specialty field, so it's I mean, and it's true, because they come together in this movie. They come together in Age of Ultron to create
Hmm.
Ultron and everything. So you have these moments where they work together, and have that level to together. I'm going to keep saying together, apparently. Um, but
I think
yeah,
I
I mean, so I
remember,
think, yeah, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say I think I remember reading somewhere that the director of The Incredible Hulk actually wanted Ruffalo. He didn't really want
Oh,
Norton for that role. So it's
interesting.
interesting to think what that movie would have been like with him.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, it would have, yeah, I don't know how that would have been different, I mean, it would have been good for sure. And I don't think necessarily the first Incredible Hulk movie is bad. Not the first one, but the MCU one with Edward
Right.
Norton. I think it's generally okay. It's one of the lower tier ones for me, for sure. It doesn't succeed as much as it should, maybe,
Hmm.
but I do like that Mark Ruffalo gets enough attention throughout the rest of these movies, or throughout the rest of the MCU, that you get the kind of the story of Hulk. It's kind of like with Natasha. I know a lot of people were kind of bummed that she didn't get her movie until very way late and stuff like that. But as a comic book fan, and I like to introduce comic book stuff into these
Hmm.
episodes as well, because it does matter in a lot of ways, that there are some characters who don't get titles. They are just characters who exist on teams or just pop up in random stuff. They're just guest stars,
You know,
because they haven't merited a book yet. Or if they do, they get a one shot or a 4 issue mini or something like that.
right.
So they
And
just don't get that.
one of the
Go ahead.
things I really liked about this one with Ruffalo was that it's one of the things that kind of pisses me off whenever they, I guess, reboot different stories like Fantastic Four. We have to keep seeing them get
The
infected by
origin.
the rays,
Yeah.
and then we have to see Spider-Man continually getting bit by the spider. Um,
Right.
y- and I'm glad that they kind of we know what happened to Banner. We know who he is, and now we just write into the story. And I like you just said, some people just need to be interjected. Natasha is definitely one of those people where, like you said, she's on a team or she's part of a group, part of Shield, whatever. Um, I think a lot of people probably got sour that she didn't get her her own movie because we ended up getting Miss Marvel before we got Natasha. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And I don't know why that rubbed people the wrong way, but she was pretty much a well thought out and set up character when we met her in Iron Man. So I don't know
I
what more
think
they needed.
I think they did a good job kind of telling her story throughout the movies. Like, you get the introduction of her in Iron Man 2.
Right?
You get a little bit more of her in this one, and you kind of get hints to her backstory. And then you get more you get more characterization in the next time she pops up is in Captain America Winter Soldier,
Hmm.
and you get a lot of interplay with her and Cap, so that she becomes a major character in that one. I would argue, more so than even in the Avengers.
Right.
And then she pops up again in Age of Ultron, and we get even more of her backstory. So as we get to see her, we get more of her story and
Hmm.
more layers to her as a character and stuff, which is good. I think that it's good, and I like the Black Widow movie that eventually came out. It was a good movie. But if we hadn't gotten it, I would have been okay with that because
Yeah,
I
I think we
felt
would have
like we
been
got
fine.
enough character here and there. I would like to see more female centered movies for sure. Not just Captain Marvel or just Black Widow. I'd like to see more women get, movies,
Right.
and and stop focusing solely on the guys as much. But, but that's the same with Hulk. Hulk's reason for not getting a movie is more complicated because some of his rights were still owned by Universal through
Hmm.
all of this. So he couldn't actually have a movie without Marvel having to pay like Universal a lot of money for that. And so they were just like, okay, well, we'll just keep putting him in, as a guest star in all of these. And as we've gone along, you've seen Hulk's arc change too,
Yep.
and
And
so
it's
I
been
think that's
really
what's,
fun.
yeah. And I like that in a lot of ways too, because they get to be part of, other people's stories but still getting, their stories changed and updated and everything. So, because at the end of Age of Ultron, he goes off, and we just think he's just still on Earth. He's just disappeared somewhere. And then, we find out, oh no, he actually went to Sakaar, and we find out that in Thor Ragnarok, so it's like,
Hmm.
it's fun to kind of get that little bit here and there without them having to have their full movie of their own. So I like that. And the same with like Hawkeye. So Hawkeye, Hulk, and Natasha in this, they get a little bit more story in this, I think, than Iron Man, Cap, and Thor do. You know, they they
I kind
all
of felt like they all had a little equal.
they all have a little bit,
Yeah.
yeah. But I felt like at least with the other, well, Hawkeye kind of gets messed over because he's like bad for more than
Right.
half
He's
the
just
movie.
like duped the whole time for like the
Yeah.
first 40 minutes of the movie. Poor
So
guy.
I know I'm kind of all over the place with this conversation, but hopefully everybody who's listening to this has seen the Avengers and you know what we're talking
It's been out since 2012. They can
about.
catch
Yeah, yeah.
up. I'm sorry. I love you guys, but you can catch up. 2012 was a while
Yeah. I
ago.
don't I don't like doing synopsis because I just assume if you're listening to this, you've watched the movie. So but yeah, so I like that they in addition to the three characters who've already had their own movies, that we get the
Right.
three characters who haven't, and they get to be equal Avengers, and we get them some more story with all of them and everything. And that's all I'm trying to say is I'm glad we get more story with them, and that even though they don't get their own stuff until later, then we're getting they get kind of a little bit every time you see them, their story gets bigger and
It's
and,
fleshed
and
out
more
more.
complex.
Yep.
Yeah. And I like that. And I feel like that's just how it was in the comic books too. You would have a character pop up, you'd get a little bit more of their story, and you just piece together what little you could every time they
You
popped up
peel
as a
back a
guest
little
star.
bit more of that layer
Yeah.
and build up on that character. Definitely.
Yeah. So, that's part of the movie that I enjoy in that aspect of it. I like that, that they use Loki because Loki in the comic books is also the person who through his um manipulations and everything, he brings together the Avengers. So in that, I like that he's the, you know, the catalyst for Nick Fury finally bringing all of them together and becoming the Avengers.
I think I also like too that Hiddleston is just, you can tell like the Thor movies, he was kind of sort of finding his place, and he's like the perfect villain. He's very smarmy. He's got all of these like, you know, just villainous lines and,
Right.
just the glares, and I don't know. He really made me enjoy watching him. And I feel this is one of those roles now, now we know, of course, Loki is not 100% evil, he's not 100% good, but
Right.
he was just eating up the cinema. Like every scene he was in, I was just like, "Oh my God, this guy's amazing." Where was this Loki in Thor? It's like I
Right.
love this
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah, no, I like the characterization in this. You can tell Hiddleston's having a lot more fun in this, I
Yeah,
think, than in the first Thor. So he's getting to kind of, play with the character a lot more, and he's getting to be, the in this one, he's getting to be bad Loki.
yeah.
So it's a lot of fun for that. So
And it's
and I
fun
like
too
that.
because he's trying to, like you said, he's manipulating everybody and he's orchestrating all of these things, but he's under the thumb of someone else too. Like he's got to make this payoff. So it's like
Yeah.
he's thinking he's going to be on top of everything and he's going to rule everything, but we all know, he's getting fucked with big time. He's not going
Yeah.
to be the badass that you think he's going to be. And he's still fearful too, when they have that one scene where he's kind of talking, across the bridge to the other world, and the guy touches him and he kind of flinches, and I thought to myself, dude, you have bit off a big ass piece of cake and you cannot eat this. What are you
Yeah.
doing? It's great. I
Yeah.
I love everything about this movie. Obviously, I love the fact that we get all of these superheroes together. And one of the things that always makes me kind of yell at my husband because he's like, "Oh, well, Hawkeye and Black Widow, they wouldn't even be in the same cat." Yes, they would be in the same category. These are ordinary people doing extraordinary things, and they've been doing it for a long time. This ain't their
Right.
first
Yeah.
rodeo. I mean, maybe not from otherworldly beings, but they're in the spy game, so they're used to doing things that us normal people can't do.
Right. And I think that, they play to their strengths as well in this movie, and Captain America, you see that scene where Captain America just is strategizing and telling them, okay, you do this, you do that, you do this.
Hmm.
Cap is like really smart about, putting the people in place where they need to be and trusting that they'll do their job the way they need to do it.
Right.
And so I like that they do, and they actually do it. And you see that Hawkeye is a very capable person. Yes, he's only human, but he's taking out quite a few of those the Chitari like chariot things. And so, he's not a pushover by any means. So,
No,
and
and at this point, he's
Natasha
already.
herself is, yeah. Go ahead,
Go
sorry.
ahead. We
No,
keep doing
no,
it.
no.
I was just gonna say, and then also this is personal because they've been using him like a puppet, and he's
Yeah.
definitely not wanting to let anybody down because that was on his watch, but it wasn't his on his watch. Like Natasha told him that wasn't on him. So
Right. He was being
he,
manipulated.
yeah, so he really had a personal reason for being as astute as he was in this fight. Like he had a whole lot going on in this fight purely from being overtaken in the beginning of the film.
Yeah.
It's so much fun to watch. It's especially at the beginning where they're kind of just all fractured and they're not really together. Um, and it's interesting to see all of the, dare I say it, pissing and measuring contests that we have between
Yeah.
Tony and Cap. It's just it's one of those films, I guess you had to be there and see it. And I mean, what like we said, watching it now, it's a little different now because everybody's kind
Yeah.
of in their role and they've got their mode going. And so Captain America to me still seemed kind of rigid. He'd only done that one movie, so there wasn't a
Yeah.
whole lot of looseness for Chris Evans to really grow that role out. And I just like how by the end of this one, you can see where he's going to be his own kind of person, and it works for me. Um, I
Yeah,
feel like I'm
yeah.
talking way too much right now.
No, no, not at all. No, I agree.
Um,
I think Chris Evans, like, yeah, and I think the character itself, because he is where he's at in terms of, the timeline and everything.
mhm,
He had just woken up not too long before this, and so he hadn't really been working for Shield like you see he's doing between this and Winter Soldier, where he's
right.
been doing missions with Natasha and stuff now. And so it's a little bit different at that point where he's kind of like unsure what to do. So you kind of see, yes, he jumps into it with everything,
Mhm,
but he's not sure fully where his place
right,
in
because
all
he's
this. And it's
still
kind of interesting to watch that. Yeah.
struggling with the fact that he's used to taking orders and not asking too many questions and, you know, doing what he's told to do, and then realizing that clearly everything that you're told to do is not the right thing. There's something
Yeah.
else behind it. I do love the fact that they all kind of come to that same conclusion that there's something else going on about this Tesseract. They must have been doing something else. And, all of those things really just, to me, it helps the team get to where they need to be. I mean, we knew
Right.
that's the course of the movie anyway, but to see it is just really exciting and fun to watch. Also Thor, the same thing. The first movie, second movie, I wasn't really
Yeah.
I wasn't really feeling that whole, I guess, the way that his character was. And even in this one, he
Right.
just seemed kind of like a himbo, you know?
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
just kind of like laughing and making fun of people and, wanting to hit things. And I was like, okay, I've had enough of this. And of course, by the time I got to, Ragnarok, I was like, oh, okay, this is the best Thor I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
But, we had to go from point A to get to point B, I guess. But I'm glad he got to do more. He got to, one thing I don't like, and I know there's a lot of things that I could be nitpicky about, him doing the whole hammer twirling in order to like get up speed to fly. And I was just like,
Yeah.
okay. I had to let that go. I was like, okay. Um, but overall, what can we say? I think we've just been jumping all over the blazes with this one. Really.
No, I agree. I
Uh,
think, they're it's they every one of the characters who'd had a movie only had, well, besides Iron Man,
Besides Iron
Thor and
Man,
Cap only had one movie
the
each.
one,
Yeah, and Hulk had only had one movie, and Iron Man had had two, arguably of varying quality, but they by the point we're at, it's you also have to take a lot into consideration with all this too of where the characters were at. Cap had just woken up not too long ago.
right?
uh Thor somehow made it back to Earth, and after the events of the first Thor movie and the
Hmm.
breaking of the Rainbow Bridge, Iron Man had you know gotten clear of that poisoning, the palladium poisoning he had gotten through.
Hmm.
So they're all in different weird places, and so I can see where it's just it. I don't know. It was a good place for them all to be manipulated in a lot of ways, both by Loki but also by Fury. And this movie gives us the most of Fury that we'd had up until this point as
This is
well. So
true, and I
which
really
is
love that.
oh yeah, and it's our first introduction to Maria Hill as well. So um I really enjoyed, of course I'm a huge Sam Jackson fan, so any chance to see him on the screen is always great for me.
Hmm.
And so getting more Nick Fury in this one was like extra bonus. So it's yeah, it's a fun movie. You get to see Fury. Fury is one of those characters who, as we see along all of this, Fury's gonna Fury. It's kind of he's gonna do what he's gonna do to manipulate and get what he wants. To help save the world, because ultimately that's what it's about for him. He, as much as as much as people can question his methods and everything like that, his whole motive is to protect the planet.
Yeah,
So,
that is
and to protect
true. I
everybody
mean,
on it. So,
and I'm glad that you said about Maria Hill because man, that lady's a badass. Like she is a straight badass. And when I saw her, I was like, is that the same chick from How I Met Your Mother? That's
right?
not the same broad playing like
That's
Robin
Robin
or whatever.
Sparkles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for a number two, he could not have had a better person. Like
Right.
she was giving ever much as she was getting. You know what I mean? And that
Which is
intro,
very much in keeping, yeah, which is very much in keeping with the character from the comic books as well, because in the comic books she actually becomes director of shield when
Shield.
Nick
Yeah.
Fury is away. Once again, Nick Fury's vanished and in hiding doing his own damn thing.
Mhm.
And because he has to, there's multiple times where Fury has to go into hiding for one reason or another, to protect shield or to do something. And he just ups and vanishes and nobody knows where he is for years. So in this instance, Maria Hill became the director of shield and took his place. And so you've got to have somebody who has that gravitas and you could see being potentially the director of shield in the future.
Yeah,
So
I think she did an outstanding job. Like when I saw her in the intro, I was just like, wow, this is nuts. Like,
yeah.
I couldn't work for Shield. I couldn't even be a secretary for Shield. I'd be like, I'm out. Y'all got too
Right.
much shit going on. I can't work for y'all. I mean, I imagine the benefits would be good, and you get to meet all kind of weirdo superheroes and villains and stuff, but
Right.
nah, I couldn't do it. I couldn't even work in the mailroom of Shield. Mm-mm. Stakes are too high.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I wouldn't
So
want to work
speaking
for the
of
premier. Yeah, go ahead.
speaking of manipulation, so I do like in this one how they show Natasha getting her
Oh yeah.
information, and then we get to see that follow suit with Loki, and he's giving his
Right.
whole speech about what he's gonna do, and she's like, "Thank you." And I
Yeah.
thought, "Oh my gosh, she's playing you like a fiddle. How do you not know this? You're a trickster." But um,
Yeah, she
very
tricked the
clever.
trickster.
Yeah, very, very clever. I really like that.
Yeah.
They all brought their
That
A
was a
game,
good
I can
moment.
tell you that. It's interesting too because we see them all kind of being divisive and name calling and by the end of it, it's like they've completely forgotten all of that and they've become that one unit. And it's also
Yeah.
because of that additional manipulation that you were talking about with Fury, with Coulson and the cards,
Right.
with Coulson perishing and then him having these bloody training trading cards with Captain America that he wanted to sign. And I
Yeah.
thought, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that
Yeah. And
that was
Fury's
like
excuse is they needed the push.
they
And they
needed
did.
the
Like
push, and
it
they
worked.
did.
It worked for them. And here's the funny thing about this. They are the Avengers, you know. They avenge, the world. They don't prevent things from happening. They avenge when things happen.
Yep.
So they kick ass when they happen. And that's the interesting thing about the Avengers, even in the comic books. They're not a family. They're not united like the Fantastic Four is. The Fantastic Four is a group of family members and friends, lifelong friends who have been together for a long time. They're not united by genetics like the mutants are.
Mhm.
The X-Men are united by their powers and the fact that humans hate them. Um, they're not united for for any of a billion other reasons. They're united because they're the most powerful, they're Earth's mightiest heroes. And so
Exactly.
they're going to have friction. And that's what I love about the Avengers. What I've always loved about them in the comic books is this is not a team that, yes, they can be friendly and they can be, and they can be friendly. Don't get me wrong. But it was always great. And this was something that I think was really missing from Hawkeye being on the show and the characterization of him being in the movies, um, was the antagonism between him and Cap.
Mhm.
Um, they don't do this in the movies at all. But in the comic books, um, Clint comes from like this carnival background, and he's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like this swagger. He has this swagger to him
Snarky.
that, yeah, he's very snarky. He's
Mm-hmm.
very much an anti-authoritarian. Like, he just like he bristles at everything. Like he always gives Cap shit.
He loves
Um,
his coffee too.
yeah, yeah. And
I have to throw in the
it's
coffee love.
yeah. Yes, Donna loves her coffee. I don't like coffee at all, but
Yes,
Donna
that's
loves
okay.
her
You don't
coffee.
have to like it. We're like the Avengers, baby. We don't have to
Yeah,
like it. We
exactly.
don't have to like the same things. We just come here to do what we do.
Exactly.
But
We're
go
the
ahead. I'm
Avengers
sorry.
of
You were
podcasting.
saying.
Yeah, no, and so I think that was a missed characterization on their part, that they pulled Hawkeye into this shield mold of, being the shield agent, and it was very much following in line with the ultimate universe version of
Hmm.
Hawkeye rather than the main universe version. And they pulled a lot of the early MCU from the ultimate line, um which was good and bad. I think, Sam Jackson, Nick Fury, good. The
Good.
characterization of Hawkeye,
Hmm.
not so good. Um, and I'm glad that later on in the Hawkeye TV show we get closer to that Clint Barton that is in the comic books. But I missed it up until then, and every time he was on, I was just like, this is so not Hawkeye, and it always
Yeah.
bugged me. It's one of the few things that has bugged me throughout the MCU. Just that characterization of him was just so off.
I can
Um,
see that. I can totally see
yeah,
that. And I absolutely love Jeremy Renner, but yeah, I can exactly
yeah.
see what you're saying.
So it's just it wasn't horrible. It was fine, but it was just one of those things where it's just like I missed that version of Hawkeye, and would have loved to have seen him be on the team rather than being the version that we got. So that
Hmm.
was the quibble with that. But let's talk about the whole Coulson of it all, because I actually think the whole Coulson thing, it really actually pisses me off. Because we had been getting Coulson throughout the movies since Iron Man. He
Hmm.
popped up in Iron Man 2, in Thor. He was, a little bit more of a character. He wasn't in Captain America. And then he was in this one. And it would have been nice to see him continue, because he was always Fury's right-hand man.
Right.
And yes, I know that he eventually, part of it was kill him off so that he could be reborn on the
Agents
Agents of Shield
of
show,
Shield.
which
Yeah.
was great. It was a good show, but at the same time, I would have liked to have seen him continue in the Marvel universe, like enough that maybe even today he could come back. Like that's what I would like to see, is
Hmm.
that him come back as a character, because I miss that character. Like
Yeah.
he was
Coulson was
such a good
fun.
foil.
And then
Yeah.
when you see him in like Captain Marvel, I was like, "Oh, okay, this is nice. We get to see you again, so to
Yeah.
speak."
And that was really cool that we got to see him again actually in the MCU. Like that,
Hmm.
he was back with that. And so, it I just, and plus his death just felt so unnecessary. I'm glad it, like, I get it. Somebody had to die to spur, and I don't even think somebody had to die. Honestly, they
I
could have
don't
done
think
it in
so
a different
either.
way. They could have done it in a different way, that they didn't need to, like, it didn't need to be Phil who died. Um, I get that they did it, you know, so that it would motivate both Cap and Iron Man, and Tony to do it. And so it was just, I don't know. It just it still bothers me. It bothered me then. It still bothers me now.
Yeah, it
And it
bothers
just
me
feels
too because
weird.
I don't felt like out of place. And you're right. I don't think anybody needed to die necessarily, and it surely didn't need to be him because he really came across so cute and funny and sweet and capable. I don't know if he would
Yeah.
be sitting there, letting Loki. Well, he wouldn't know Loki was sneaking around his back, but
Yeah.
it's just I don't think he would have gone down there and done what he did if he thought that there was a chance of him dying. Obviously, he doesn't think that. He's thinking he's doing the right thing, but
Right.
yeah, it does feel unnecessary. It does feel it feels a little trite, if I could say that
Yeah.
whole word. It just seems like why are we doing this? But,
Yeah.
it did get the gang back together, I guess, or get the gang together. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it accomplished its goal. in the way that it needed to, I guess, for the story. I just wish they had
Hmm.
found a different way to pull them together to get them to, jump out there and go do what was needed rather
Yeah.
than having Phil die.
I mean, I would
So,
have rather, I would have rather Natasha be held, well, not, I don't want her to be a damsel in distress because she wouldn't be, but
yeah,
I was gonna, it would be nice if it was somebody else that needed rescuing and then that's why they all came together or whatever. But it is what
right,
it
yeah,
is, we know we lost Coulson, we lost poor Phil.
yeah. And I mean, it's good that he did get to, you know, reappear again in
Hmm.
the Agents of Shield show, and that went on for what, like 7 seasons. So
Yeah, it was
it's
long.
yeah. I I unfortunately did not finish it. I kind of dipped out somewhere in the middle, and then would come back, little bits here and there. But
Yeah,
I'm
same. I think
I'm
it was like
eventually,
season 4. I kind of
yeah.
trailed off somewhere, so I probably should go back and watch.
I think the problem was the whole Inhuman stuff kind of like
Yeah,
really bogged it down for me because I've never cared about the Inhumans. They've always been uninteresting to me as
I feel like
characters,
that's like a
and
B
so
team, you know?
yeah.
If I could
So
say that,
it's
it's like
just
a B
it's like
team.
the Eternals. Like I mean, as much as I think the Eternals is, I like the Eternals movie. It was fine. I don't love it, but it was a good movie.
I
But I also
like it.
don't think it was necessary.
Right, I was gonna say
Um,
I like it, but if they had not made it, I wouldn't have missed it. I wouldn't have been clamoring
right.
for it. Like, could you please make an Eternals movie?
Well, but this is the thing too, because the Eternals don't ever really succeed in the comic books. Also, they they try to keep bringing them out every once in a while, and they never go anywhere. Like
Yeah,
they don't go on for very long runs. And because I just don't think there's enough story with them to tell that is interesting enough that people care. And it's the
I
same with
always
the
wondered,
Inhumans.
and I always
Go
wonder
ahead.
why they go for, there are so many Marvel stories that you could be telling. Why are you picking ones that nobody is clamoring for?
Right. Right. Well, and I have to suspect that there's probably something that happened in the Eternals movie that is going to play into
Oh
things
yeah,
later on. Now, of
I know what
course,
you're talking
they
about.
tease Dane Whitman, who becomes Black Knight.
Hmm.
So and Black Knight is an Avenger in the comic books. Um, so we probably will get something like that, but I think that there could possibly be more. We still have the Celestial that's like partially risen, and so there's probably something that's going to be involved in that arena. So hopefully, anyway. So we'll see. We'll have to see what
We'll
happens, but
see.
yeah. So it's just I don't know. I feel like they could have done even like coming back to this. I Colson's death just kind of was like a bummer. More than anything, it was just like
Hmm.
I like the character. Yes, I'm glad we got to continue to see him in the Agents of Shield, but because they pushed him over to there, he never got to come back into the movies. Yes, we finally got to see him again in Captain Marvel, which was great. But I would have liked to have seen him come back eventually
And
into
the
the
rest of them, yeah.
MCU. Yeah, and maybe the recent Secret Invasion show would have been a cool place for him to pop back up,
Oh
and
yes,
maybe help
definitely.
Fury again. But and I'm gonna leave that conversation for a much later time. So but yeah, it's this movie, I like the Avengers movie. I still like it. I think that it succeeds more than it fails. It did a great job in bringing them all together. It made a lot of money. It proved that you could do this. Unfortunately, it proved that Marvel could do it, but it also has proved that nobody else could do it.
Right.
um Everybody
Nobody
else
else
has
can stick the
attempted to do
landing.
this
Right.
because everybody else is trying to do it too fast, and Marvel did it over the course of 4 years, several movies building up to it before they did that. And
See, and that's
that's
the
the
genius part of it.
yeah,
We got
yeah,
to slowly know these characters individually. But when you're trying to cram all of these people's storylines in one movie and then giving them a villain to fight, who the hell got time for that? Like
yeah,
I don't even know what you do. I don't know what you're about. We get to get these characters fleshed out, even if they've only had one movie. Tony had two, but to know them and get to kind of see who they are as people and then like you said to have them come together in this one movie and then go off into their other movies it just makes it so much broader, and we get to see everything's that world building. It just kind of just you got like one thread going to the next movie, and it's little breadcrumbs. And I know it's driving people crazy that they got to watch 49 movies before they, 49 movies and 19 shows to make sense.
Yeah,
But if you don't, if you don't, it's a great way to be a part of that world. So you
right.
you kind of you kind of want to do that. You want to dive in there and do that.
Well, and again, I will go back to this, and I've said it a couple of times already on the show that I don't think you necessarily need to watch everything. I think that if you do watch everything, great, you will get a fuller, more complete, and more complex story involving all the characters and all the little side things that pop up, all their little
Hmm.
side stories and everything. It's fun. It's interesting to me, but you don't really have to watch anything else. If you want to just watch one show, if you just want to watch
Hmm.
Captain Marvel, you can just watch her movie. You don't need to watch any of the other movies to understand anything else. Will you get more context and clarity on some stuff? Sure. But I think they do a good enough job that you could, and in one of the discords I'm in, I saw they were talking about it even today,
Hmm.
was about how like somebody felt like that you couldn't watch something like Endgame without knowing everything that came before. And I argue that you actually could. I think that you can actually watch Endgame. They give you enough information in the course of that movie to understand what's going on. If
I
you
think,
watch the other stuff, will it be even better understood? Yes.
yeah,
But I think that you
absolutely.
can understand it enough to get through the movie and understand it, because I've actually heard from people who've only watched Endgame or maybe Infinity War and Endgame,
Hmm.
and that's all they've ever watched, and they understood it enough to enjoy it. And so I think that's the case, is that you can watch whatever you want, whatever characters you're interested in. If you only want to watch the Spider-Man movies, watch just the Spider-Man movies. Watch the Ant-Man movies if that's all you like. It you will get complete enough information in those movies that you don't need to watch anything else. But
I
if you
think
do
the
want
thing
to,
about
it's more fun.
I think the thing about Infinity War and Endgame that works for me, if you wanted just to watch those two, is that they have the directors doing the parts that, they've already directed the people, so that it
Right.
makes it make more sense. However, you're right. You could watch, all of the Iron Man movies and then watch whatever other movie you want to watch. You don't necessarily have to watch all of the shows to be up in the know. But like you said, it does make it better. At least to me, it's like reading, you know, I don't know. It's like reading Tolkien's books and then you only read like one of them and you don't go to the other ones.
Right.
I don't I would want to know everything about this world that I'm
Yeah.
embarking in. Now you can
Yeah.
watch them separately. That's perfectly fine. But I'm like, I'm one of those people. I'm gonna go all the way in. I
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to go
Oh
in
no,
the
I'm the
door. I
same
don't want to
way.
go halfway in the door.
No, I'm the same way, even with the DC movies. I'm not a big fan of the DC movies in general, like, or DC comics in general. I like them okay-ish. I know enough about them that I can,
Yeah, I mean, I think
watch
they're
the
okay.
movies. Yeah. But the movies themselves have been kind of up, very much up and down. I think Marvel does a much better job than DC overall. Um, and but I watched all the movies because that's who I am as a person. I
Hmm.
need to watch them all. I need to know the full story.
Right,
You
me
know,
too.
I can watch them all separately and enjoy, like, or not enjoy, but I can understand what's going on without having all the backstory and everything. But I do like to have all the backstory because that's just
Hmm.
who I am. I like interconnected worlds. I always have. I love
Yeah.
stuff like the MCU or Marvel comics in general. The MCU, I like Quentin Tarantino movies because they connect. I like Kevin Smith's movies because they
Yeah,
connect.
I love that.
Yeah,
I don't know. To me, it makes me feel like I have a better experience, especially with these different phases that we're going through in the Marvel
right.
Cinematic Universe. Why wouldn't you want to watch, and I get it. Some people don't want to like, well, you'll get to that when you get to that. With Captain Marvel, for example, people didn't want to see that. They didn't think that there was
Yeah,
anything to that. I don't know how you could deprive yourself of Carol Danvers, but that's just me. Um,
right.
that's purely
I
me.
like that movie.
I do too. I'm gonna let
People
you
can
talk to
suck
that
it.
when you get to that. However,
Yeah.
let's get back to the Avengers. So before before we start trailing off and making our own world that we're going to be talking about other things other than this movie. I will tell you, I absolutely love the fact that we get to see all of the characters, and then we get to have mention of other characters. We get to see Dr. Is it Selvig?
Yes, Eric
Skarsgård.
Selvig. Yep.
We get to see him, which I thought, oh, this is so great because I never thought I would see him again. I never thought they would bring this character back. And we see him, and of course, he's under Loki's control, but that's okay. He kind of snaps out of it. But we get to see that, we get to hear, we get to see Pepper, we get to hear um, Thor ask about Jane. These little things matter. I like the fact that they kind of touched on people from other movies, even though, if
Right.
you didn't watch the movie, you might be like, who the hell is this guy?
Yeah, yeah.
But
But it
these things, they were clever. It was clever. And I
yeah,
love the kind of foreshadowing they did, obviously at the beginning where Cap and Tony are at each other's throats and he's like, well, you're no hero, take away the suit, what are you? And of course Tony gives this funny quip, but he said, oh, you're not a hero, you're not the person to lay down on the grenade or whatever. And then of course
right.
that's what Tony does. That's exactly
Yeah,
what he does. uh you know it's nice because these people think that they see one thing on the surface and then they realize these people are something else. We see Tony on the surface, but we already know Tony's a hero because we've seen it in the first two movies.
right.
We see Cap and we think he's just going to be a good soldier and follow orders, and he does, but he realizes that there's more to it than just simply following orders and stopping Loki.
Right. Yep.
So all of these things I love that they're just kind of coming into their own. It's like almost like you get to see them grow up a little.
Yeah. No, and that goes back to what I was saying before, and I'm sure I don't think I even finished my thought on it, but the Avengers themselves are this group of people who come together to fight something that not any of them can fight alone.
Mhm.
And that's why they come together, is for that reason. They're not a family. They're just united by friendship for the most part. They are friends in the comic books.
Mhm.
And but some of them are antagonistic with each other. They're grudging comrades in arms at times. But they will put their stuff aside, and you saw that in this movie too. They, obviously they were being manipulated and arguing with each other, but once they realized, you know, they needed to, you know, get on the ball and everything, they stopped arguing. They immediately got into action and started teaming up and doing what they needed to do to
Mhm.
get the job done. And
And it
that's what makes the Avengers great to me.
yeah.
It's this group of people who come from all these different backgrounds, all these different, personalities and everything. And sure, they're
Mhm.
not all gonna agree with each other, but that's what makes it work in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Is when it comes down to it, they will work together, and they work together very well.
Yeah, and I do love how at the end they're kind of all going their different ways, and
Yeah.
I don't remember, I think it's Maria that says, how do you know that they'll come back? And it's like, oh, they'll come back because we'll need them to. And they
Yep.
they are just going to do it. It's not like they have a bat signal or anything. They know when shit goes down that the Avengers are gonna come. That's just how it is.
Right. Because that's how the Avengers work. They'll go off and do their own separate things, but when there's a situation that requires more
Hmm.
than they can handle, they will come together as the team to fight against it. Thanos, Ultron, Loki, whatever. Those moments are they come together because of that. And otherwise they're just doing their own thing, which is exactly like the comic books.
Yeah.
Every character, every major character that had their own ongoing series, like Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, they all had their own stories that they were going on. But then, they also had the Avengers book where they would come together to fight some villain that they couldn't fight by themselves. And so that's what makes it fun to me. Like it's very much in keeping with the comic books.
Hmm.
And that's why I love what they're doing. And they proved with this first phase, in this first Avengers movie, that they could do that. And I
And
love
then
that about it.
and we do need to talk about the ending though, because we get into the whole post credits and we see Thanos and he's like this really jelly color purple. I absolutely laugh every time I see this the Thanos that they the shade that they have this Thanos in, and also the shawarma. I forgot about the shawarma at
Yeah.
the end. So yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot going on. The
Yeah,
shawarma
there's a
scene
lot.
had me cracking up in the theater when I saw that. It was just too cute.
Yeah, no, I think that's a, it's a fun little, and that's why I think they do good about like the end credits things. Like, people give them a lot of shit for, doing end credit scene. But I think
Hmm.
when you do it the way this movie did it, where they're um um where they do um the mid credit scene is the important scene, and then the
Hmm.
end credits, the after credit scene, is just a fun little thing at
It's
the
just
end.
the
I
fun
like when they do it
thing.
that way more,
Yeah.
because that way, you know and it still baffles me to this day. I will still go to a Marvel movie and people will start walking out as soon as the
As
credits
soon as
start
the
rolling.
credits are on and we're
Like,
all
at
sitting,
least wait for the mid credits.
the
Like,
mid-credit, no,
yeah,
dude, they're out.
they are
It's like,
out. It still baffles me. It's like,
and I always
how are
wonder,
you
is this
watching
your
these
first
movies?
Marvel movie? Is it this can't be your first Marvel movie, right?
You're just not a
Like
fan of
there's
these
gonna be
movies?
something,
Like, what? Yeah. Like,
but
why
it's
are you
so great.
here?
It's so funny too because I remember seeing in the theater, of course, they're in the middle of fighting and nobody's probably had time to eat. Although we've seen Tony, snacking all over Shield
Yeah.
or whatever, and he goes, "Yeah, there's a great shawarma place. I think I want to try that after this fight. We should go and eat." And then that's what we see at the end. And I thought, no, that's such a cute callback, like.
Yeah.
Because they got to be starving. You had no time to rest. You had no time to barely breathe. You're fighting
Yeah.
interdimensional beings. Why wouldn't you eat shawarma?
Yeah, you're hungry. You're just like, it's your adrenaline's like all depleted. You're hungry. It's like, go get some shawarma. Then that shawarma place could be totally like, we serve the Avengers.
I know
Like,
exactly right.
that would
The
be the
place
ultimate
that
endorsement
served
for
the
them.
Avengers.
Yeah. The interesting thing though about that whole thing about him snacking too, it's an interesting little side thing. Um, Robert Downey Jr. himself would place snacks all around the set for him because he likes to snack uh, while he's doing stuff. So they actually kind of incorporated that into the scene because he was just like, in that one scene where he's with Banner and he offers Banner
Hmm.
a snack. That was a completely kind of like off the cuff type of improv thing that he did because he was snacking. And so, it was just this interesting little bit that they added into there that was actually part of Robert Downey Jr.'s, personality itself. So
I
I
think
thought that
that's
was a,
kind of
a neat
cool
little
too,
thing.
because he's just like,
Yeah.
"You want a blueberry?" And Banner puts his hand in there and he gets, it's like really cute, off the cuff kind of thing.
Yeah, that's yeah, it's really fun. I enjoy, those little moments like that, the fun little stuff. Again, it's it it's not as interesting an Avenger movie as it was back when it came out. And
Hmm.
when it came out, of course, it was unique, it was different. It was like the thing that brought them all together and managed to succeed above everybody's wildest dreams. And and the fact that they were able to do it even better later on
Hmm.
down the road was, is a testament to, all the people who came into the MCU later, and all of that, and Kevin Feige himself, steering the ship. So, this was a good test run. It's better than, Age of Ultron, which I'll get to. Um, but yeah, it's a fun movie. I think overall it's good. Um, but I do have issues with it. It's definitely not as good as I thought it was back then, but it's still a good movie.
Yeah, I would agree the same. It's not as good as I thought it was when I first saw it, but I still have a hell of a lot of fun with it. And
Yeah,
it's nice. It's a nice way, like you said, to kind of put that ending on that first phase before we move on to the other movies. So
right.
it's um it's stellar. It did its job. I can honestly tell you from my perspective, I love this grouping better than when I saw the X-Men. Something about even them coming together in this first movie felt more cohesive to me than the
Oh
X-Men
yeah.
did, if that makes any sense to you.
No, it does. I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Something about the X-Men movies, they were good. But there was always something that felt off to them. And
Hmm.
maybe it was because they tried too hard to make them too realistic in ways.
Yeah.
I mean, not it, they weren't too realistic, obviously, but like I don't know, by not giving them their costumes and stuff like that, it kind of took away something
That took
for
away
me
a
from that.
huge bit of it. Yeah. And then,
Not having the individuality. Yeah.
yeah, and like we just said, we actually got a really good flow with this because we got to see each of these characters being in their own movies. The whole Mark Ruffalo's Hulk aside in Black Widow and Hawkeye, but to see the other characters kind of have their own films and get to know them, I think that helped.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. All right. Do you have anything else to say about this movie?
Uh,
I'm kind of done.
no,
But if you
not
have something
really.
else you
I
want to mention,
mean,
all right.
no, not at all. I think we sped through. I know we didn't really break it down, but you guys have
Yeah.
already seen it. I don't think you want us to break it
Yeah.
down. It's like, getting bit with the radioactive spider again. You don't need us
Yeah.
breaking
Yeah.
that shit down.
Yeah, exactly. I do want to. I did think of something just now, though. We get the
Mhm.
little Thanos tease at the end, which I thought was cool. I think that because he mentioned like the other mentions
Mhm.
to mess with the Avengers and mess with Earth is to court death, and then you get him turn and he smiles, and you get that whole because Thanos was in the comic books. Thanos loved the personification of death and wanted to basically like actually love her
Mhm.
as a person and stuff, and death didn't want to have anything to do with him really. um and that leads him in the comic books to gaining the Infinity Gauntlet, um which we have in the MCU, but it's
Mhm.
slightly different. So it was a little funny little tease, especially as a comic book geek, to get that. Ooh, he's yes,
Yeah.
he's in love with death. That was the little line to that, and then they kind of don't ever focus on that later on down the road. So it was like, yes, it's a nice tease, but then that really didn't go anywhere.
But
So I
then
was
you
like, all
didn't
right,
pander out. Yeah.
yeah. So it's like, all right, but whatever. But yeah, I like that the at least the little tease because they were setting up. Oh, Thanos is the big bad of where we're leading to along this whole way, which was kind of cool. So
That
not
was
only did we
really
get the
cool.
big the this big movie, but there was also something even bigger coming.
Bigger
So
coming. Oh my
yeah.
goodness.
All right. Well, that's about it for this episode, this phase. Why don't you let people know where they can find you online?
So you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and my podcast, Donna underscore the THA underscore dead. And that's it. I don't really have anything. Well, I did join Discord, but I'm never there.
Yeah. I know you're never there. I know
Never
she
there.
comes
I'm
onto
trying to
my
be
Discord and
better.
she's never there. We have
I'll
to
be
get you on
better.
Blue
I'll be
Sky
better, I
also.
swear.
All right. Yeah, go follow her. She's she does great posts all the time on Instagram. She does a lot of horror stuff on there, and go follow her podcast because she talks a lot about horror movies on there as well.
I do.
Yes. All right. Well, it was great to have you on again. We will actually be seeing you very shortly because you're coming back on the next episode um,
Woohoo.
with my daughter for the escape room movies. So
I cannot wait.
everybody stay tuned for that. In just a couple of days, she'll be back. Thanks again to Donna for joining me. Coming up on next week's episodes on Monday, Donna returns to the show along with my daughter Katrina for part 2 in my sequel series with Escape Room and Escape Room Tournament of Champions. On Friday, we start phase 2 of the MCU with an episode on Iron Man 3 with guest Mixbell Morgan. Thanks for listening. If you like what you've heard, please consider giving the show 5 stars and a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Also, Please share the podcast on social media to help spread the word. Make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app or at creepyandgeeky.com. Music for the podcast composed by Jerry Smith. You can follow the podcast on social media at Creepy and Geeky on both Twitter and Instagram. If you'd like to follow me, I'm Geek Thulu on Twitter and geek.thulu on Instagram. You can support the podcast by ordering teas and more on TeePublic or by donating to the Ko-fi page. All of the links are in the show notes. Finally, don't forget, stay creepy.